Hey, good morning. Yes, it is. It is Sunday, June 29th. I apologize for the last couple days, but something's been kicking my ass. So, I'm back again. So, I thought today we'd talk about following directions and why some people succeed and why some people don't succeed. Or maybe just because it takes them a little longer. So, stay tuned. Alrighty, welcome back to the channel. My name is Eric, if you didn't already know it, and this is the weekend. The weekday is Monday through Friday, and we talk business and so forth, and then usually on the weekends I go off the rail. But since I didn't put a video out on Friday nor yesterday, I thought we'd do a little mix up of both. And that is a little personal development and kind of business sense, right? Not good for a Sunday. Because today's supposed to be the Sunday sermon, right? Following directions. How good are you at it? See, problem I have is I'm hard-headed, bullheaded, whatever you want to call headed. And to simply follow directions can sometimes be my own demise. Because what ends up happening is I look at, let's take my bread recipe for sourdough, right? So far, after numerous attempts, my bread could be used for either patio blocks or the foundation for a house. And since I don't have a need for either of those, I'm trying to make the perfect bread so I could eat the damn crap, right? So I decided to follow the directions, follow the recipe to the T. And as I was doing that, I realized, you know what? Part of my problem is I wasn't following the directions. I was either skipping a step or thinking that, well, I gotta have it my own personal touch, right? So let me take a perfective recipe and screw it up royally. And that's by adding too much of this or not enough of that. So yesterday I got out my fancy dancy scale, food scale that I bought because the last video on YouTube said to buy one. So I've got one. And then I proceeded to watch another video where the guy was using a food scale, but he was measuring it out in ounces and then tearing and then adding more and tearing. So I followed the directions to a T. I took 4 ounces of my sourdough starter out of the fridge, and I added the correct amount of ounces of water, warm water, and then I proceeded to add a pound, 1.4 pounds of flour, and then so many grams of salt, and then squished it all together. And then it said put it in a Ziploc bag and let it sit and permeate for 24 hours till it doubles in size. And see, that's where I was screwing up. It wasn't the recipe up until that point. It was the 24-hour rise. I wasn't giving it enough time to expand. And I'll tell you, watching bread rise for 24 hours is not a glamorous job because it's still rising on my counter and it won't be ready until around noon today to put in the oven. But that's life in a nutshell. I mean, and that's business. Is I can tell you exactly how to succeed, but if you listen to me very often, I always say take what you can use and leave the rest. Make it your own mantra so that you are willing to dig deep when you need to carry you through, right? But in a way, is that correct? Because had you just followed my directions, wouldn't you have succeeded? And the answer to that question would be no. Not everyone is destined to be successful at business. And I don't define being successful at business taking a startup and making money, because you've only done part of the equation. Unless your new job is, I am going to do startup businesses and then sell them to somebody that can take them to the next level. You see what I'm saying? So there's more to business than just getting it off the ground. It's the day-to-day operations that screw most of us, because it becomes mundane. It becomes like going to the dentist and having a tooth pulled. That part of it isn't glamorous. That's the 24-hour rise time, and that's where a lot of us flounder, is that we're used to, oh, we got to do this and got to do that, and we're going off from sheer hype. But real business boils down to the non-glamorous stuff, and that is the day-to-day operations. That means managing employees, paying bills, and all the other good stuff that goes with it. I know a lot of guys that are great at doing startups, and they should make that their living, because once they get it running, they get bored with it and move on to something else. And I used to be that way. Now I'm just old. It's once you get it up and running, and you should always have growth every year with your business. It shouldn't become stagnant. So there is some little bit there for to increase, but your business should increase so much every year. And you're saying, well, I only want one location. Okay, have one location that does one thing more. If you're a cake shop, why not take on, pastries instead of just cakes? You see what I'm saying? Offer something else that can bring in more revenue. And instead of having two locations, expand the size of the one. Or create a system where you're warehousing and you're baking in a warehouse and packaging and shipping it to stores instead of selling it in one location. There's a lot of different ways you can go with it depending upon how deep you want to get and how much you want to take on. When it comes to business, I always tell people money equals time, and time equals money. The more money you got, the less time you got to spend that you can hire somebody that already is doing a fabulous job at just that, right? But if you don't have a lot of money, you're going to spend time learning how to do what the other person could hire somebody to do. And for you guys that are great with startups, my best advice to you is hire somebody that can do the day-to-day and keep it growing at small growth rates so that you can move on to the next startup and the next and the next and the next. There's a lot of people that are out there that do just that. They will build up a business and then sell it for good money and then go to start up a different one. And there's nothing wrong with that if that's what your mantra is. I'm going to start a business with the idea I'm going to sell it before it gets to the boring, mundane, day-to-day operations, right? And there's a lot of people out there that are really good at that, but don't know how to start a business, don't have the drive, that don't have the willingness to, the biggest part of starting a business and doing a startup is you're not sitting there focusing on the failure. You're not sitting there thinking about how much risk is involved. You're doing it. You're all in. And your day-to-day guys are unwilling to do that. That's why they never start up a business, because they're not willing to put out that much risk in the beginning product. They feel that the risk is too high and it never materializes. The ones of us that love startups take a lot of risk, right? You have to take a lot of risk. No risk, no reward. I've always said that. And it's not my words, it's somebody else's. But that's life too. You know, you can't enjoy life if you're just tied up in the day-to-day mundane. You know, I'm not saying to go out and skydive, you know, or jump out of a perfectly good airplane. I'm just saying there's more to life out there if you want it. And we're here just a short period of time, as I very well know it. And I got a second chance. And I was telling some people over on a Facebook group that it's called the Zipper Club. And it's people that have gone through bypass. And I was telling them that you don't very often get a second chance, right? And this is our second chance. And I've taken it to be, you know, there's something God wants me to do, teach, learn, what have you. But as I told them, I've done more, enjoyed myself more in the last 7 months than I have the last 25 years. What's the difference? Because I look at life being very short now. And before, I always put off doing the things that I wanted to do because of projects. Something always coming up that needed to be done, that fishing could wait till tomorrow. And it could wait till the next day and the next day. And next thing I know, I'm 62. I've got over 80 fishing poles, 5 cloth tackle boxes full of gear, a boat out in the garage, and haven't gone fishing. Good intentions don't bring out positive results. So what's changed? Instead of putting stuff off, do it. Instead of putting off fishing this morning, go do it. And that's exactly what I'm doing. Yesterday, I was planning on going fishing in the morning, and with a friend of mine that had been sick all winter, I was going to take him up, see if he couldn't catch some brook trout. I showed up at his place, knocked on the door. Nobody answered. Called him on the phone. Nobody answered. And this was 7:30 in the morning. And mind you, if it was like me at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm pounding on somebody's door, I probably would have got arrested, right? But he had things planned for the day of his son coming up, which is perfectly fine. But it kind of screwed up my schedule. That's why I decided that when I went back to the office to see what to get myself into yesterday, the sourdough recipe popped up on my YouTube as I was watching a video. And I took that as a sign from God that he wanted me to try my recipe again. But what I'm trying to get across is don't put off today what you can do tomorrow, right? Because tomorrow may never come. It may never come, guys. And I don't know about you, but it just seems like yesterday when my kids were born. And now they're 42 and 40. What the hell happened? Where'd all that time go? And I know I've got less ahead of me than I did behind me, right? I'm following the recipe today of how to make sourdough bread exactly by the ounces. And I mean ounces on my fancy dancy scale. And I've even bought me a fancy dancy cast iron with a lid on it to make the bread in. And some parchment paper. I told you, I'm following the directions to a T. So if it don't turn out, it's God's fault. Because he wants to keep me around longer, bumping my head trying to make this sourdough bread. Don't put off today thinking you have a tomorrow. Take today and go forward and look at it as your life being short. What are the things that you want to accomplish in life? What are the things that you want to do? What are the things that you used to do that used to bring you pleasure that you no longer have time for? Make time for it. Make time for it today. Get the plans going. You know, there's always going to be projects. That I can tell you. And what I find is when you go out and you enjoy yourself and you give your body a chance to kind of wind down, for me, it's nature. Whether I'm fishing, hunting, as long as I'm in the woods, being one with nature, it's quiet, but yet it's not quiet. I listen to the birds, the turkeys, the owls, you know, and I'm sitting there watching field mice, to rabbits in the field, to a coyote running across the field, or a fox. You know, there's always something going on when I sit there. And it gives me a chance to wind down. The phone is not, I'm not scrolling on Facebook or YouTube while I'm sitting there. If you're doing that, you're not being one. You are just doing what you've been doing right along in a different location. Turn your phone off and just sit. Take a vacation where you're right on the water somewhere, where it's nice and quiet. Maybe you'll see a beaver, otter, muskrat, some fish jump, frogs singing. Be one with nature. So on that note, you guys have a great Sunday, and I'm really sorry about the last couple of days, but as I've told you before, if I don't feel I can do it, I'm not going to half-ass it. I'm not going to look like death has become me. You guys have a great Sunday.